Now it's time for Toker Talk Radio, the voice of the marijuana nation.
What are you people? On dope?
Where you can toke.
I inhale frequently.
Or you can talk.
I experimented with marijuana and didn't inhale.
Or you can toke and talk.
10 federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
While we talk about toke on Toker Talk Radio.
So, by the way, when it comes to pot, if you're 40 years old, you live in a log cabin in Oregon, you got 12 giant pot plants in your backyard, have a ball.
Live from beautiful Portland, Oregon at Rolla J Studios.
Hey, this is great.
Yes, cannabis.
Plus your calls live at 971-533-7111.
They're walking on their pants with their cap on backwards, listening to the Enema Man and Snoopy Poop Dog.
What's to keep somebody from getting all potted up on weed and then getting behind the wheel? Gateway theory doesn't work. It's a reality.
Holland, is it real? Don't tease me.
We're locking up people that take a couple of puffs of marijuana, and the next thing you know, they got 10 years.
And now, here's your host, the guru of ganja graphics, the sultan of sativa statistics, and the worst nightmare of a reefer mad prohibitionist. A polite, perspicacious, productive pothead with a propensity for PowerPoint. Radical Russ Belville.
Oh, yeah. Thanks so much, Day Tokers and Tokettes. Welcome to Toker Talk Radio. We are live here from River Rock MMC in Denver, Colorado, a medical marijuana center, 100% vertically integrated from seed to veg to flower to trim to put it on the shelf and sell it. Everything's done right here from beginning to end. It's been a really fascinating tour, getting to see all of these regulations in effect, to see how marijuana can be a well-regulated business, giving people jobs, really nice jobs, and providing help for the people who want it. So it's been an amazing event. We've got some video from the tour. We showed that in hour one. We'll have those in the replay as well. I'll get some of those cleaned up a little bit too and post them in high definition in our on our YouTube page and make those available to our VIPs once I get some spare time, of course. Also, we got Brian the Red in the studio back in Portland, Oregon. Hi, Brian.
Hey there, Russ. Hey, everybody.
We're having ourselves a good time. How'd those videos come out on your side? You like what you see?
Oh, man, that was some beautiful stuff there. I saw that one that was all droopy like that, and I started drooling. That's a Ruderalis base there. That's how they grow. But beautiful high CBD strains, great medicine coming out of that place. Kudos to them for all the work that they're doing.
Yeah, a lot of friends of the show also work here. Token Daily, if you know of Paul Token, he's affiliated with River Rock, and a few other folks. Dread Smokes Weed was out here, and a couple other people. It's just amazing how a lot of the people who've been part of the movement have become, people with positions of importance within this new regulated industry. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for my shot, Get
that to you as soon as we can. Joining us here also, we've got the founder and owner of River Rock, Norton's back with us. Hi, Norton.
Hey there, Russ.
So we were just, commenting on the videos and the wonderful operation you've got here. I wonder if you can tell us any of the scope of it as far as size and turnover or number of patients, anything like that?
Well, I think some big picture metrics are the good way to start.
Okay.
So the Department of Revenue has reported in tax year 2012 a medical marijuana market size of roughly $200 million a year.
Wow.
So that has generated $5.6 million in sales tax to the state and to the city of Denver, about $2.5 million in tax year 2012. So we have 108,000 patients under our current medical marijuana regulatory framework consuming roughly $200 million. Now, this goes back to what I said last hour, vertical integration. So if these patients are consuming $200 million, then the industry has to produce $200 million.
Right.
Right? It's a zero-sum game because there are no outside sources. Not that I'm sure, like in any other industry, there are some bad apples pushing the limits of the law. However, those people don't last. This is not a get-rich-quick scheme, and it never has been. Mm-hmm. And the people that treated it as such when we started in this industry almost 4 years ago are no longer here.
Yeah. One of the things that we've seen as well is how this larger regulated market has had an effect on price here in Colorado, where probably lowest anywhere in the country, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I think so. So right now at River Rock, our ounces, if you're a member, you can get an ounce for $100, a non-member, $130. Now the top shelf strains, those are hand-trimmed exotic strains that do not produce a lot of product. Those will roughly $180 to $200 an ounce.
Wow, and that sound you heard was the sound of jaws dropping across the United States, where people are paying, $400 to $600 for stuff that's of medium and doubtful quality. What a boon to customers, to patients here, that you can have something that's reliable, that's organic. Your stuff's all organic.
All organic, we grow in soil, long and slow. Again, right now we are focused on medicinal strains. The market is changing. January 2014, as Amendment 64 shops open their doors, as we convert into a dual-use facility, I think the market's going to change significantly. Mm-hmm. However, and this I stress, we will continue for the medical side of our business to focus on those particular strains that have the right cannabinoid profiles, the right ratios of delta-9 THC to cannabidiol to CBD to THV, in order to meet our patients' needs.
Mm-hmm. That's something that we were discussing in one of the videos too, is how there's been this push since it's been such an underground commodity, and prohibition always pushes a commodity to be more potent and more smuggleable, and to cater to a recreational desire. And we've bred out CBD and some of these important terpenes and flavonoids that are just now beginning to make a comeback. We're going to take a little bit of a break, get a couple commercials, and when we come back, we'll talk more about that, CBD aspects, and how this whole recreational and now medical and now recreational coming into that, how are the businesses dealing with that, what regulations are coming next, and more from River Rock MMC right here in Denver, Colorado. You're listening to The Russ Belville Show on 420radio.org. Be right back.
We'll be right back after these messages from our 420 friendly sponsors. Support these advertisers because their ad money goes straight to the Russ Belville Show. You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
We're going back to San Francisco. That's right, everyone. The High Times Medical Cannabis Cup is returning to the Bay on June 22nd and 23rd. Come to the Craneway Pavilion in Richmond, California for a High Times celebration of the best weed in the world. Meet the top canna businesses of the Golden State. Hear experts discuss indoor and outdoor growing. Find out about cannabis cuisine. Learn about the exciting new world of concentrates. Enjoy a massive medication area reserved for California medical marijuana patients only. And don't forget our swinging Saturday night concert when the stars come out. But as everybody knows, it's all about the cannabis. On Sunday night, we present the High Times Medical Cannabis Cup Awards for Best Sativa, Best Indica, Best Hybrid, Best Concentrate, Best Edibles, and more. Plus, we honor a living legend of the modern cannabis movement, San Francisco's own Dennis Perrone. That's June 22nd and 23rd at the Craneway Pavilion in Richmond, California. Go to medcancup.com for details. Be part of the growing cannabis community.
welcome back, everybody. 10 after the hour. We're on Toker Talk Radio live here at River Rock.
River Rock, Russ. Come on.
My credit union is River Mark. That's why.
Are the edibles kicking in already? Or?
That must be it, folks. We're at River Rock MMC here in Denver, Colorado. We're speaking with Norton, who's the co-owner and founder of this amazing medical marijuana center, 100% vertically integrated. And when we left, we were talking about how, there's now a better focus for medical strains. We saw Harlequin on the video. We saw a lot of high CBD strains here. So as this transition happens, to integrate Amendment 64 and the recreational market, how will that change? Or will that change what you have to do here?
Well, I was lucky to serve on the governor's regulatory work group just the last few months, which put forward a series of recommendations to the General Assembly in order to, write the statutes that would implement Amendment 64. All that to say, Amendment 64 has given us the general blueprint, the General Assembly has given us more specifics, and finally the Marijuana Enforcement Division is going to give us the particulars. We have fashioned a system of virtual separation between the two inventories and the 2 point of sales of the medical marijuana center and the retail marijuana store. That is to say, through the use of technology, through the use of RFID barcoding, an individual plant will either belong to the inventory of the medical marijuana center or the adult marijuana store. So the two inventories will not be commingled. We will then be able to grow specific plants for the medical patients and other plants for the recreational market. And it's interestingly enough, a lot of the baby boomers that come in and try, the very potent THC strains right now are a bit overwhelmed in the beginning. And so what we're actually doing is a bit of a degeneration, is that we're actually using some older strains, some pure strains from the 60s and 70s that perhaps will ease the entry back into cannabis use for many of the people of my parents' generation.
Panama Red, Acapulco Gold, Maui Wowie.
There you go.
There we go. Wow, that's really good news. I get, folks listening to the show, older generation, it's like, where can you find that? They can't find it anymore. This will be the place, huh?
Well, regulation has given us the ability to do this and a lot more. And, my medical director has said to me many times, he said, listen, Norton, if this plant didn't carry with it the 70 years of taboo and prohibition, if this plant had been discovered in the jungles of the Amazon 6 months ago, Big Pharma would be salivating in order to get their hands on this.
Yes,
it's only because of the political baggage that this plant hasn't been able to really be studied and its benefits brought to the general public. And so thankfully, and thank you voters of the state of Colorado and thank you voters of the state of Washington for breaking that final taboo and saying cannabis use is not evil. It is not wrong. It is something that adults can partake in responsibly.
Absolutely. Now, as we, you're mentioning, bringing on these legacy strains and catering to these new markets, this recreational that's going to open up alongside medical. And it seems kind of, we talk about the political realities, the optics of situation and stuff. But isn't it kind of weird that you could take a seed and cultivate, let's say, a Jack Herer strain on the medical side, but you couldn't take a clone off that and bring it over into your recreational side? You'd have to start from a brand new seed, wouldn't you?
Well, yes.
Yeah.
The technical answer is yes. And, sometimes bureaucracy doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to argue that point with you, Russ.
Right.
But the idea that one facility will be able to use technology to segregate its inventory in order to really have transparency and accountability. And that is the end game. That when the regulator walks into our facility, when he checks out our point of sale, when he sees our records, we can guarantee that this is a legitimate product and it was not purchased from black market sources.
So is the need and the regulations regarding the tracking from seed to sale on the recreational side much different from the medical? Is the same idea?
Oh, looks like we
in the state of Colorado, an individual can purchase 2 ounces.
Oh, okay.
Under the adult use laws, residents of the state of Colorado can purchase up to 1 ounce, and out-of-state residents can purchase up to a 1/4 ounce.
Gotcha. So at the retail side, across the...
Well, labeling is going to be different.
Okay, looks like Russ is having some internet connection problems.
Oh, no.
Okay, you there?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm here.
Okay, good. You were cutting out a little bit.
Okay, I think we're back on now, though. Is everyone hearing us okay?
Yep, I can.
All right, thanks, Brian.
We feel, given the 3.5 years of experience that we've had in commercial cultivation, that we can meet the needs of both our medical patients and our adult.
Oh, then there they go. It looks like we lost. Okay, and we're going to bring it back.
See if you can pick up on this. We're back with the 420 radio. We're just coming in with audio, Brian, if that helps any.
All right, let's keep it like that.
All right, sounds good. So it's going to be interesting for a while in that you'll have these kind of almost parallel systems of recreational and medical running alongside each other. It would be nice to see, maybe sometime in the future they maybe merge and you not have to have two bureaucracies.
Well, I'll tell you why we can't do that. And that's because the medical market cannot be taxed at the rate that the recreational market is contemplated to be taxed at. We're talking about a 30% difference per purchase.
Okay.
And so it is incumbent upon any Colorado medical marijuana patient that is listening today to us here on the Russ Belleville radio hour to continue seeing their physician, getting their recommendation. If not, you're going to be taxed 30% per purchase. So imagine that. That's a huge difference over the term of a year.
Well, I imagine this might, incentivize some people on the recreational side to want to be medical, if they can, if it's a 30% cut. So does the government, does the medical marijuana side fear that a little bit? Do they have safeguards against it?
Well, the physician is the gatekeeper.
Yeah.
All right. The physician has to be licensed with the Colorado Board of Medical Examiners. He has to have a current DEA number, actually. He has to meet the standard of care when he sees a patient, and he has to come to a decision whether or not to, the best medical knowledge available, this individual might benefit from cannabis. Right?
And they're also, there's a proscription against financial involvement with these centers, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
So there's, it's not like, one-stop shopping. You can get your red card and then get your medicine in the same place. It's going to be a completely separate thing.
It is. It is a completely separate thing, and the integrity of the physician-patient relationship has to be kept intact.
Okay. So there's some good stuff there. We're learning, why we need to have this separation. There's a separate tax structure. There's somewhat of a separate inventory, and
it looks like we lost
medical use on one side. Maybe people are looking for more, sativas and THC on the recreational side. It's going to be interesting to see how this all shakes out.
Yeah, and the new product lines. I mean, the line of vaporizer pens with particular cannabis oils in them, bath soaks, topicals. I mean, any way a person can ingest it, this plant will adapt and position itself for benefit to humanity.
It's been transformative here in Denver. We've seen all sorts of neighborhoods and blighted buildings that have been purchased and refurbished, and there's just an economy here. It's amazing.
The economic ripple effect is tremendous.
And it looks like we're back. All right, so we're having some call interesting. We'll go off for our 20-minute break, and we'll come back with video from Michael Levensohn and the Aspen Legal Seminar on the Daisy Bram case about child endangerment, taking people's kids because they're growing a marijuana plant, even for medicine. It's disgusting. We'll be right back.
Well, you all know what that sound means. It's 420 somewhere. I'm here at Rollatide Studios, and Russ is in the land of the free, so toke up if you got it.
Have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. Have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. If he said he swam to China, he would sell you South Carolina. Then you know you're talking
Smoke Shop and Speakeasy is your source for cannabis community gear in southern Wisconsin. Owners Brian and Tammy Wood are located in Kendall, just outside of Madison, and they've got everything for the smoking enthusiast, including a full assortment of pipes, water pipes, hookahs, bubblers, one-hitters, and so much more. They're open noon to 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday and can help you with your detoxification therapies as well. Call 608-466-7473 or email woodpipes@yahoo.com for more information. That's 608-466-7473 or email woodpipes@yahoo.com. And as always, go pack go.
Hey guys, Nico Escondido, High Times Magazine, here with another video grow tip of the week. We're here in a little hydroponic garden. It's a very manageable operation. Some of you might be doing something similar at home or thinking of it. And we just wanted to show you a little bit about the feeding system, the irrigation system, if you will, that they've implemented in this grow room. Because it's one of the more popular varieties these days. It's very simple. It's a top feed hydro system. And if you just look right down here in the pot, you'll see right at the top they're using top hat spray emitters staked into the medium, and they just are fed by spaghetti lines, and they just do a little top feed. They just spray 360 degrees all the way around. It gets even penetration. And this grower, he does it very simply. They just water for about 2 minutes per day. That's all it takes, 2 minutes per day. They got 4,000 watts running in this room, and it's going to yield somewhere around 7 pounds. And they're using a nutrient line called Black Label Nutrients. It's very simple, and it's amazing that they get these yields. If you look, the NPK ratios are very low, and with a feeding regimen of only 2 minutes per day, but you still see the weight, the chunkiness of these buds. This is an OG pheno. It's in week 7. It'll go just past 60 days, I believe, and the yield is epic. So there you go. If you're thinking about doing some hydro, check out some top feed systems. Spray emitters are great. And you want to find a nutrient line that has a minimalistic approach, something that's not going to clog up your spaghetti lines. It's going to get, just the right amount of nutrients to the plants so that they're happy and healthy. And man, all I can say is I wish they were coming down today, but they're not. See you guys later. Nico out.
Through the water, in the sky.
I think it's good that we had a quote from Mark Twain the other day, because I think I became the...
All right, everybody, this is Michael Levensohn covering the WOTC, what about the children, argument at the the Normal Aspen Legal Seminar. This is the Child Endangerment Seminar.
But people have come up and been very accommodating to me over the last couple of years, so I do appreciate that. I think Lauren's right. I mean, another Mark Twain quote from the beginning of Huckleberry Finn is, you don't know about me without you have read a book called The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. Well, probably nobody would know about me without they know about Daisy Bram. When we put together the PowerPoint, it's at the end, but I'll just tell you very briefly how I got to know Daisy. I was working with another lawyer at the time. She called, apparently looking for me. How this was, I don't know, because the lawyer I was working with was far more well known. And she started telling me her story. Her case is in Butte County, California, which is way up north. In Oroville is the place where the court is, which everybody seems to think Northern California is this sort of la-la land when it comes to cannabis. Butte County is not. And they have kind of planted their flag, and they have particularly planted their flag on this issue of child endangerment related to marijuana growing, possession, etc. We were lucky enough in the beginnings of this case to actually get the the fly on the wall information. There is a woman who is a judge in that county now, but when she was a prosecutor, she did a whole seminar for the DAs on the issue of child endangerment. That's the child stuff thing. And she was very passionate about how It's a beautiful thing that that marijuana, medical marijuana, doesn't protect people from child endangerment charges, and what a wonderful thing it is that we can kind of fold this thing together. She's just got a little bit more love for this. She's just a little bit too turned on by how they can really get people for this. And this county has turned itself into kind of ground zero for this in many ways. It's also the case, and I think Michelle might actually confirm this, it's also the case that, at least in that county, they are reimbursed by the federal government for each child that they take away and turn into an adoption. In other words, completely sever parental rights. And so they have an incentive. I mean, it's the sort of thing, when I first heard it, I thought, this sounds like one of those conspiracy theories. This can't be true. It is true. It's been confirmed by many people to me. And that seems to me to be the kind of thing that actually would offend the sensibilities of almost anybody. I mean, even people who, may have some doubts about, certain practices that people have, they're not going to like the idea that there's actually an incentive, a monetary incentive to separate parents and children. But anyway, so I got to meet Daisy. She came and spoke to myself, me and my legal assistant and I at the courthouse when we were there in another case. And, she just put her best foot forward. This is someone who obviously basically had no money. Her boyfriend was locked up in jail. Her children had been taken away, 2 of them at that time. She now has 3. And, she just walked into this conference room. She had a whole bunch of materials. She was carrying them like a schoolgirl, like this, across her chest. She was wearing a skirt and a sweater. This is someone who was really trying to present herself as someone who really wanted help, deserved it. And it took about 2 minutes. We decided we're taking this case pro bono. We don't care what the boss says about this. We're going to do this. I was shortly about to leave that practice anyways. And so she and I, well, that wasn't a for sure thing, but when it became even slightly contentious as to whether to continue with this case, the question was clear. And it's turned out to be a real journey. One of the things that occurred was when she and her boyfriend were being arrested, her children were being taken on the theory of, well, these people are being arrested, there's no one to care for their children, even though her boyfriend's mother was not far away. They wanted no part of that. They were there with the Child Protective Service as the arrest was being made. This was an arrest that was predicated on growing marijuana, and there was some evidence of honey oil around the apartment, around the house. And that was about it. The genesis of it was about 3 weeks before this arrest. There's been a compliance check done by some sheriffs who came up there to talk to these people, about their growing. There's been a motion to suppress that's going to be renewed. The sort of legal details of some of this don't matter so much, but as her children were being taken, a recording was made, and she just was crying this primal cry, my babies, you're taking my babies, how are they going to eat? Because one of the allegations that was being made as this progressed was that she was poisoning them by nursing them, by virtue of her having used cannabis during a time when she was nursing her children. This, by the way, has not been proven in court, but it was one of the allegations that was at least up front being used against her. So they got this recording. Her boyfriend is representing himself. He got the recording, and it went viral on the internet. And within not a long period of time, she and I both were being contacted by, I felt like the Joan Cusack character in broadcast news. Really famous people are calling me. I mean, we were getting calls from NPR. We were getting calls from I forget it, the radio network that Democracy Now! Is on. They wanted to interview us. Several. Pacifica, yeah, that was it. And she wound up on the Dr. Drew show by herself, nursing her baby while Drew is talking to her. He, by the way, pointed out that he thinks that alcohol is the gateway drug, not marijuana, which actually, I think common sense actually says that's probably true. And so, in any event, she was facing cultivation, possession for sale charges, and child endangerment charges, 2 counts at that time on each child. We defeated those counts at prelim. We defeated the child endangerment counts. They since have refiled and brought in what they claim to be much better evidence. It hasn't really borne out that way. that prelim is set, it has been continued several times. She got pregnant again. She had another baby. There were problems with the people's expert witnesses. There were problems with our expert witnesses. And it actually is supposed to get going again within the next week or so. But, excuse me, having defeated those charges, she then, her children were in, this is Butte County, her children were in the child protective legal system, which I think most people see as just like it's like on the other side of the looking glass. I mean, there are no rules. It's a Jabberwocky world where the standards change. She wound up representing herself there, essentially, and she'd been arrested in September. In December, she got her children back. And this was really a big deal, quite frankly, because I think for most of us that are exposed to this, that was basically unheard of, that, you know, they would have basically fooled their tent. They told her at the time, they told her privately, and it's been documented, they said, you know, you called our bluff. Because they had told her, look, give up the marijuana, give up the boyfriend, and frankly, she was getting this kind of advice from some people sort of in the community. She became quite popular and still is in some cases amongst many of these people, and they were sending emails, you know, just do what they say and you'll get your children back. And she was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not doing anything wrong, and I'm not going to say that I did. So they said to her, you know, you called her bluff. We just thought we could force you to give up using medical cannabis. And she said no. And they couldn't sustain their case, so they gave the children back. They were free and clear to her. Now, unfortunately, I think in our business, some of us probably feel like who's the Greek character who has to roll the boulder up the hill? And then Sisyphus, okay. I think we're like Sisyphus a lot of times because, you know, she has been arrested again and is facing new charges in another county, functionally the same. This time, I actually debated about whether I could just make it work on a pro bono basis, this new case in a new county. And then I guess, and I do not say this to pat myself on the back at all, I guess I just decided, you know, because some people were saying, you know, are you really sure you want to do this? And I basically said, you know, I mean, when you're a criminal defense lawyer, we don't really get to call to central casting to send us our clients. You know, we get them as they come to us. And if I'm going to be in for a dime, I'm going to be in for a dollar. I mean, maybe I'm mixing metaphors, but, you know, we have developed a friendship. We've developed mutual understanding. She's the second best legal assistant I've ever had in a courtroom. She sits next to me. She points at things. You know, a lot of times when we're defense lawyers and that client's poking you and trying to tell you something, you're like, you know, focusing. She has an ability to pick the one thing that's going to make a difference oftentimes. So she's one of the few that'll go, okay, let me see that, you know. And so it's just one of those things. I'm just not going to walk away from her. We're going to walk this walk together for as long as it takes. Obviously, yes?
Would it be possible that you, as this plays out, go to retribution?
Retribution? Yeah. Meaning like a lawsuit? Well, she actually has, she's been lucky enough to become sort of befriended by the Normal Women's Alliance. And so they have undertaken to file a civil lawsuit on her behalf on the first time around. I mean, she obviously, honestly, and I should be the first one to admit this, she's complicated matters for herself by being arrested again. This was not, you know, I mean, it doesn't help. Presumably, if the argument is, by the way, in the second preliminary hearing of this matter, the prosecutors conceded the fact, that is to say, in the preliminary hearing of this matter, of the new matter in the other county, they conceded that raw cannabis was not dangerous to children, which is actually one of the topics I wanted to talk about. So when you're dealing with child endangerment charges, there's sort of categories of things that they sort of go after. One is just the presence of raw cannabis and growing plants in a household. Now, as a general proposition, raw cannabis is not psychoactive. It has to be heated or decarboxylated is the term. It does have a small amount of negligible free THC in it. Otherwise, it's THCA, THC acid, and is not psychoactive. Over time, at room temperature, it will decarboxylate, but it can take a considerable period of time. So basically, having raw cannabis around is, anybody who's a parent knows that children, small children will probably pick up and put almost anything in their mouth once. But the other thing and we've gotten testimony from expert witnesses about this, is that raw cannabis is just not palatable. It's not something that people eat, and particularly not to a child's palate. Sure, they might put it in their mouth, but it's going to taste terrible. It's dry, the consistency, and it's just not, it'd be like eating some raw plants in the backyard or something. Children don't do that. I mean, once in a while, they'll put it in their mouth and you'll see them spit it out. So that is genuinely not a danger. But one of the other things is they try to make the case. There are, yes? Well, I'm going to get to that, but why don't I just go right to that? Okay. What I was going to say is there's a category now of expert, quote-unquote experts that law enforcement uses, which are drug-endangered child experts. And, of all the self-designated, expertise, that's one of them. And so I had, for example, an expert in a case who was talking about, that's in there somewhere, but the expert was talking about the grow chemicals being a danger. And the judge said, this was in a prelim in Riverside, and the judge stopped and he said, wait a second, you're talking about like fertilizer and stuff like that? He goes, yes. He says, well, I have that stuff at my house for my orchids. You're going to come and arrest me? And I was like, finally, there's a judge who really gets it, And the cop was kind of like, well, no, but, So those things, presumably any house has chemicals under the sink and the garage and the basement and the bathroom. And obviously, you want to use sensible precautions. I think Michelle will address best practices more accurately, but that is not really where the danger comes in. It is the case. This is where, okay, so you asked about BHO or honeoil or butane. Right, now, if raw cannabis is not dangerous, which it basically is not, it is the case that I do think, whether it's life-threatening is another question, but I do think that many people would agree that concentrates put into edibles would be something that a child might eat, a brownie or a cookie, etc. And I actually did read the thing in the Denver paper about this. Go ahead.
I was actually pulling articles on NPR, and there's literally a weekly story, and it is all about the edibles. It's children and dogs getting into the brownies, the cookies, the lollipops, when parents not paying attention.
And just in chatting with people over the last couple of days, I mean, there's a lot of people who have had the experience of seeing an edible that just looked great and eating too much of it and then just getting their head knocked off an hour later, okay? So it's certainly not, it's something you want to be, clearly would want to be careful around children. Now, as it relates to manufacturing, at least in California, there is a specific statute against manufacturing by chemical extraction. And that has been held, and I think someone else in the materials here referred to the Bergen case, People versus Bergen. That is the case. That is illegal to do, even for medical purposes. And they define the chemicals as volatile chemicals, meaning chemicals that, volatile is defined as those that rapidly evaporate, okay? So, excuse me. It is illegal to do it that way, and it is potentially dangerous. I mean, if you're people who are using butane extraction or literally playing with fire, it is dangerous. That's not to say it shouldn't necessarily be done where it's legal to do, but it's probably not advisable to do around children. But this is one of the things that in the child stuff, I think it's page 9, where Judge Keithley, actually no, in the not my thing, but the other thing. Okay, well, in any event, she talks about the beauty of arresting somebody for the, well, anyway, she talks about the beauty of it is that you can arrest somebody for manufacturing, and it's just a ready-made child endangerment case if there's just children in the house, and this is just such a beautiful thing for us. Yeah, there's the BHO case law, but where does she say it in here? Maybe it's the next page. She goes, the beauty is that we get to know. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I wanted to assure that there are, well, in Oregon it's not illegal to manufacture, and there is a company in Portland called Skunk Farm that manufactures Terminator, which is a self-contained butane extraction device, and so it negates a lot of the danger. And it just strikes me that in this kind of a case, if you have that kind of a device, then you're less at risk for these kinds of charges.
I would agree with that. I don't know that that specific device has been tested in the courts, but using volatile chemicals as a general proposition is not allowed. Now, actually, somebody could maybe answer this for me, because I hear about CO2 extraction all the time. As far as I know, that is not a volatile chemical. It is not a dangerous form of, it is a chemical extraction, quote unquote. That issue's not been tested in California courts either, but I think it would probably pass muster because it's not something that's going to basically blow up or cause a fire, yes.
Well, but that's only half fair, because the state they put the CO2 in is under a state of, it's not a normal state for CO2. So
explain that, because I don't know. I honestly don't know. I should, but I don't.
About temperature and pressure, right? That brings the CO2 to a special state where you can do the extraction.
So a spark is going to cause a...
I don't know if a spark.
I'm not sure either. I know that the same place has a self-contained CO2 extractor as well. I think there are some dangers, but
tremendous pressures are involved. So.
I'm still thinking about evaporation.
Say again?
Evaporation.
Okay.
Rapid evaporation, yeah.
So it really is the same.
Still light, so
okay.
Right.
Yes, sir.
I have a case right now. I think I have the only BHO case in Wisconsin, and they've also charged my client with possession of improvised explosive device,
Ooh.
And they have him on $150,000 cash.
Mod on.
and I've had 3 hearings on bond reduction. I can't get a judge to move on it because Milwaukee Journal reported it as the guy was making bombs.
Well, what accused him of being part of Al Qaeda yet?
No.
Okay.
Can you also comment on the issue of how best arguments for prosecutors in child abuse and child endangerment cases where they're growing and they're basing it on the chemical, or you having plants in your house that they don't like?
You mean the arguments to oppose this?
The arguments of why it's a BS case and how to get this messed.
Well, basically, I think what you're pointing out is evidence of how, what this ultimately is an extremely emotionally charged issue of the entire thing. So what prosecutors do, it allows them to get creative, and it's basically what you were saying, which is, it's like, okay, well, maybe it's marijuana, maybe it's medical. But there are children there. Now we can take what those people made that legal kind of, but we can get them because they must be doing something wrong to their children. And to take an extraction case and make it into an explosive device case.
There were no kids, so we made it an explosive case.
Fair, right, exactly. But people will shrug their shoulders and go, well, that sounds really dangerous, So it plays upon, and when it comes to children-related issues, and I think the approach that I try to take with this is, let's just put it this way. I mean, there is nothing, in my opinion, really, there's nothing worse that you can accuse someone of than doing something to harm their own children. It's just so basic. It's the kind of thing that hits people so hard. It takes on a life of its own. It's just to even be accused, to be suspected of that is such a stigmatizing thing. It's such a, and it gets people off, it destabilizes anyone when that suggestion is even made, which means that police use it. Tell us about your husband, or we can take these children, or, if he doesn't admit this, these children are going to CPS, or one of 1,000 varieties of this, okay? And people are like paralyzed. They don't know what to do when they're being encountered by this. Excuse me. And the same thing can happen in the courts. But I think the most effective thing to do, quite honestly, is really, it is kind of with any litigation, and I'm not going to pretend to be the expert litigator, but I will say this. Generally, I think you need, to the degree to which you can, to take as much emotion out of that as you can by simply focusing on the facts. So, for example, in the second preliminary hearing in Butte County, relating to Daisy Bram. They brought in a doctor this time, a drug-endangered expert doctor, a pediatrician, who claimed that in her clinical practice, she had treated 10 children who had eaten raw cannabis, gotten extremely ill, and tested positive for THC. And so I asked her several questions, and by the way, she also had no scientific basis for this. She had no study to cite. She had no scientific journal or article to cite. She just said, this is what happened. Excuse me. So I asked her several questions just to bear it down. Well, do you know whether raw cannabis contains THC? Her answer, that's not within my area of expertise. Do you know the mechanism by which raw cannabis or THC would cause illness to a child? That's not within my area of expertise. She actually said that enough times, or said she didn't know enough times, that when my 10-year-old son, Elijah, the prophet from Passover, was reading it, he said, this person says, I don't know so much, she doesn't deserve a doctor's certificate. And I'm thinking, if a 10-year-old can get this, so in any event, but I think that's what you have to do. So you have to just bit by bit, honestly point out, and of course the classic, all the really great trial lawyers here, the guys from Oklahoma and all the other people, they'll tell you, look, the way is to kind of do a little jujitsu. You take the opponent's power and you kind of reverse it. So you say, okay, there was raw cannabis, but do you know whether it causes harm? Or, better yet, what I was lucky enough to be able to do in Daisy's case was point out that they noticed nothing wrong with the children. There was no deficit. They were perfectly active. They never went near the cannabis that had been dropped on the floor when they were raiding the place. They were happy. They were healthy. They tried to sneak in a couple of lab tests, and their chain of custody was so pathetic that it didn't work. So, I mean, really, that is what you have to do. You just approach it the way you approach all litigation. And, you point out what's good for you and what's not there, which is actual harm to the children, let us say. And then you try to point out that the mere presence of any number of things all by itself is not really the issue. It's because what would have to be coupled with any of that would be a great deal of inattention from a parent. I mean, certainly yes, ma'am?
Are they testing children?
Well, if they take them away, they will generally do a hair follicle test, which has a test of some limited value. At least in California, they try to send these hair follicles to Kansas for a test, and the chain of custody is like non-existent, which is really helpful in a criminal case. It apparently doesn't impress juvenile dependency judges much because they just don't care about that. I probably should get going here. There are any number of other topics, but one of the other things that I would point out is that another sort of tack that they're taking now that they're realizing that lawyers can point out that cannabis itself is not harmful is they'll say, well, growing cannabis makes the home more dangerous because it's more likely to be burglarized. And I actually had the detective in Daisy Bram's case that a cannabis grow is more likely A, to be burglarized, and B, to lead to a violent burglary because because people are less likely to report this to law enforcement if they think, because they know, even if they're growing it medically. So he actually testified that the latent sociopathological sadism of a burglar that would not be invoked in robbing a house for its jewels would be invoked by virtue of burglarizing a home because cannabis was being grown there. He literally said this was true. The judge in that particular case didn't buy it. Okay, so I think Michelle has a lot more sort of very good information. I know she has a lot more information about best practices, but I think as attorneys we just need to really kind of internalize the idea that this is something that this is a true injustice. The fact that something that someone is doing legally and being careful about and that is not causing harm is really suffering from the stigma that's attached to the use of cannabis as opposed to any number of other things that are infinitely more harmful. And that alone is being morphed into endangerment. And you have to just kind of deconstruct it bit by bit. And now I'll let Michelle take the stage.
while she's setting up, I'll share with you a lovely tidbit from the task force. The standards for child-proof packaging that they require constitutes child-proof. If it takes the average child, 10 or 20 minutes to get into it. The problem is, especially when the rules were created for medical patients, when you're preventing a child from getting into it, you're also preventing the MS patient and a lot of other people who actually need the edibles that Michelle is going to be, and other medicine that Michelle is going to be talking about. So raises some fascinating questions about what should be the best practices and how to deal with it in a way that makes logical sense.
Thank you. A little bit about me. When I first graduated law school, I worked for Legal Aid in Texas, and I worked there for 9 years, did a lot of family law, a lot of social change because we were advocating for poor people and, people were facing various obstacles. And what I have found so far with the marijuana and parenting custody issues is that there are 3 areas where it can come up. It can come up in criminal cases, like Michael was just talking about, and I don't deal with the criminal defense cases, but those are potentially the most serious. Second, they can come up in CPS cases. And I'll call it CPS even though they're different agencies in every different state, but it's Child Protective Services, and it's where the state comes in and says, you're not fit to be a parent, we're going to take your rights away. And then the final place that it can come up is just in a family law case between parents, just a regular child custody situation. In Colorado, that does not happen very much at all. That within a regular custody case, just the use or possession of marijuana becomes an issue that they ask the judge to consider. In the criminal defense cases and in the CPS cases, yes, it does. So I wanted to review the law very, very briefly. Then I want to play you a little clip of the most recent NPR interview this past Thursday from a doctor at Children's Hospital in Aurora talking about edibles in this study that he's done that's going to be published in the Journal of Pediatric Medicine by the AMA. And then I want to spend the most time on the social change that it is our responsibility to do, to help our clients do, to help patients do, to help consumers do, and then lead the charge ever forward. How do I make this go up and down?
Space bar should do it.
Okay, so what is child abuse? And again, there are the 2 tracks. There are the CPS cases, which are civil statutes, and then there are the criminal statutes that are basically the DA's office. So the most evolved view, and we're seeing this come more and more often, is that use alone isn't enough. In addition to the use, you've got to show some sort of an endangerment to the child. In other places, use is illegal, that's it. Texas, my beloved teacher of how to litigate state, in the CPS cases, the state can terminate the parental rights if the parents endanger the physical or emotional well-being of the child. So you can see civil litigators love this, physical and emotional well-being of the child. You look at the surroundings, this is where Michael said you get down to the facts. This is where the best practices that parents are going to develop are going to be brought in to say, well, you did this, you had your prescriptions locked away, they couldn't get to them, your grow room was completely inaccessible, you had it checked for mold, whatever the standards are that we begin to develop. But look here, under the criminal statutes in Texas, there is a presumption that a parent places the child in danger simply if they use a Schedule I controlled substance when they don't have ability to do so. So that last phrase, even though in Texas marijuana is not legal in any way, what if this statute were adopted in another state where if it is legal to do so? For example, in Colorado right now, would this statute protect, under the criminal code, a marijuana user since it is now legal in marijuana to use and consume? So I think there are some good cases to be litigated. In Colorado, the CPS cases, it's neglected or dependent when the child's environment is injurious. So we get back to the physical environment again. And then there is not an equivalent for the criminal consequences, just the use, but it is a crime if a controlled substance is manufactured where a child lives. And so I'm not going to get into all the details of manufacture. There's some case law in Colorado that's good. That talks about it's highly individualized, we have to look at these facts. If the sole basis is the use of marijuana, you got to have something else that shows that there's a threat to the emotional health or safety. What they looked at is, the father used marijuana while the children were at home. So there was there was a risk of smoke inhalation. Consider if a child has asthma. We need to be very realistic about what these risks are and what people are going to say and get the sympathy of them. So it's very easy to have it be a practice in your home that you do not ingest marijuana by smoking it when your children are present and around. I think that's a reasonable accommodation that we can make, and I think we gain a lot of ground if we make that accommodation and encourage people to do that. The mood stuff, this is going to get me to the mental health issue. We don't yet have great studies about what the impact of marijuana is on people's moods. It changes from strain to strain, from person to person, and we just do not have enough information at this point to make a conclusive statement one way or the other, and so that's the attack that we have to make there. Habitual use, substance abuse. This is again where the court systems go to the mental health experts. We have got to get the mental health experts on our side in terms of understanding the actual effects of marijuana, not the stigmatic effects of marijuana, not the mythological effects of marijuana, but the actual ones. So substance abuse and adequate supervision. And so you see the adequate supervision kind of plays into the, oh, you're stoned and spacing out idea. DSM, this is horrible. So know your symptoms of abuse for DSM and be ready to counteract them, but you're going to have a mental health professional help you do this. Adequate, no food, no water, etc. And I know I'm speeding through this, but I really want to get to the conversation part. So toddler's reach, when kids can get it. Let me play this clip. And again, this is Dr. Wang from the Children's Hospital.
Legal, and as more states legalize it, I think it's something we all need to keep in mind.
So we talked about in our introduction that kids were having trouble breathing and walking as a result of exposure. What else?
Yeah, so like with any other exposure, the symptoms are a kind of a spectrum of effect depending on how big or small the child is or how much they got into. So some kids came in.
Okay, well, thanks for joining us. That was Michelle Clark, preceded by Michael Levensohn, talking at the Aspen Legal Seminar this last weekend. Thank you all for joining us here. This has been Toker Talk Radio, and for Radical Russ, who is packing up and on the road, I'm Brian the Red, and as always, take care of each other, Tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it.